Our Hello World example is now set up. In this video, we're going to look at probably one of the most important concepts to understand when working with Bootstrap, and this is the Bootstrap grid system. The grid basically allows us to lay things out nice and easy, and uses the CSS flexbox under the hood. To begin, generally the first thing we need to do is to create a container for our contents. This is added as a CSS class of container. So let's head over to the project and first remove the h1 of Hello World, which is just here. We can then add our div with the class of container. So just create a div, just like we normally would. And this time we can add a Bootstrap class of container. Containers are required when working with the Bootstrap grid system, as they act as a wrapper for our content. Using them also allows us to center our content both horizontally and vertically too. Nested inside, we add a second div, and this one has a class of row. So inside the opening tag, add the class of row. These rows act as a wrapper for laying out content by using columns. Bootstrap's grid is 12 columns wide. This means if we want two equal sections side by side in a row, we could set both to be 6 columns wide each. If we wanted 3 sections, each would need to be 4 columns. So let's add our first div inside the row, and this is going to have a class of col-md-4. Inside of here we can add some text with the p tags of 1/3 wide. So because the grid is 12 columns wide, we're taking up 4 parts here, so this is 1/3 of the width of the row. If we then copy this in and pasted it 2 more times, and also make sure this is indented properly, just like that. Now if we give that a save and then refresh the browser, we'll get 3 sections on the screen, each with 1/3 of the width of the row. To see these grid sections better, we can add some background classes, which are also provided by Bootstrap. So after col-md4, we can add bg success, and this gives us a green color. The second one can be bg primary. This is for blue, and the third one can be bg secondary, and this is a grey color. This now shows us the effect of the container we added. The container is a fixed width, so if we're to stretch the browser even wider or smaller, we'll see that the width changes with different breakpoints. There is also a full width container available too. All we need to do is change container to be container fluid, and this will span the full width of the page, but I'm just going to stick to the container for now. We can also have multiple rows inside of this container too. If we go back over to the class of col-md4, this MD stands for medium-sized devices, and we can control exactly how many columns wide we want the content for different screen widths. If we go back over to the Get Bootstrap website, which is getbootstrap.com, and then documentation. If we go down to the layout section on the left hand side, and then under here we have the option for the grid, so select this. If we scroll down to the table, which is just here, we'll see here we have a class prefix, and we've used col-md for medium-sized devices. This table shows us the size in which each class applies to. For example, small is 540 pixels, and large is 960. We can add as many of these prefixes as we want to. For example, we could have a layout 12 columns wide on small screens, and then change to be 6 columns wide on medium screens, and then down to 4 columns on larger devices. We only have the medium prefix set, which is 720 pixels and above. So if we shrink the browser down to below 720 inside of our index page, the 4-column width no longer applies, as we can see here. We can change this by adding col sm. So rather than md, changes to be sm. Refresh. And this now applies to small screens. If we wanted this green and the blue section to be side by side, we would need to set this to be 6 parts each. So we could go ahead and change this to be col sm6. And then also on medium devices, change this back to 4. And also for the second one, we can add col sm6. So both of these first sections, both on smaller devices, will be 6 columns wide, and then change to be 4 columns wide on medium devices. If we save, refresh, these two sections are now 6 columns each, and the grey section is the default 12 columns. If we make this wider, to go above the medium devices, this again will change to 4 parts each, because we've set that here. Let's now take a look at a different scenario. Imagine if we change both small divs to be 4 columns. So col sm4, and the same for this one too. This means we're not taking up the full 12 column grid. We only specify 8 parts for smaller screens, which if we save and refresh, and then go down to the small screen, this will now leave a space at the end of the row. For this case, we can move the content by adding an offset. We can add this offset on the left hand side, pushing these two into the middle. So if we do offset -sm, again this will only apply on small devices, and then 2 columns. This will now push the row across by 2 columns, leaving the green and blue section in the middle. If we stretch the browser, this will also apply to all sizes above 2. So now on the medium devices, we still have this 2 column offset. This is easily resolved by setting the offset to be 0 for whatever screen we want it to be removed. Let's try and remove it from the medium sized screens and above. So let's add the offset -md -0. So this will make sure that the offset is removed on medium-sized devices and above. If we now refresh, the offset is now removed on the medium devices, but if we shrink this down, it should still apply on the small screen. We can simplify things even further. If we just want all divs inside of a row to be equal, we can just specify col. So rather than having all these classes here, if we want to keep things really simple, just add col. The same for the second section, and also the third. Give that a save. Reload. And with this in place, all of our sections will take up an equal amount of space on all screen sizes. So this is how we use columns with the Bootstrap grid system to lay out our items. Now we know more about the Bootstrap grid, let's now move on to adding some content to this project.